adore my 64, my Commodore 64.
It's been quite some time since I noodled around with the old Commodore 64, so I think I will revisit a favorite of mine from my youth. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Dreamhouse.
I adore my 64, my Commodore 64.
Not to be confused with the game show of the same name that used to give away literal dwellings as the grand prize, Dreamhouse was a program developed by Joyce Hackinson Associates and distributed by CBS Software. Now turn your fantasy of the perfect home into a reality with Dreamhouse. But before we fire up the floppy, let's take a look at the contents here. There was something about computer software packaging of this era that I sorely miss. I've discussed this before in my C64 piracy episode, link above and below, but they really like to stuff these boxes with all sorts of documentation. For example, here's a copy of Felony, another title from CBS. There's practically a small library in here, and reading it all could have very likely qualified you for a free one-topping personal pan pizza. Of course, much of this also doubles as copy protection, even if only indirectly, since it can be harder to figure things out without the reference material. Dreamhouse is not quite so complex, but flipping through the instruction manual, it is evident that you might have missed out on some bits of fun. Specifically, the special animations I will discuss later. I find it interesting how they sketched approximations of what you're seeing on your screen instead of actual screenshots. Video Game Instruction Manual Sketch Artist is a job title that doesn't really exist anymore. Also in the box you get a warranty postcard. It might be helpful to know that the head of the warranty department for CBS Software back around 1984 was one Mr. Joseph Daly. Although I would strongly suspect he no longer works there, considering the company is long defunct, and it's been close to 40 years. Finally, we have ourselves a CBS Software product catalog entitled Making You the Best. It does seem like a somewhat lofty promise for a software publishing house, but let's go with it. That said, the company was quite prolific at the time, with a healthy selection across multiple genres, even scoring the Children's Television Workshop license for a few titles. One in particular, Timebound, I covered in a video I made several years back. There's a card and a link, but please, don't watch it. Let's slide this disc into the 1541 and get things booted up. When you first start the game, you are greeted with a Sid Chipper rendition of Home Sweet Home by Sir Henry Rowley Bishop. When you're ready, you are presented with a choice of 4 blueprints for you to turn into your dream dwelling. You have a Manhattan penthouse, sitting high atop the city skyscraper. You have an old-fashioned colonial farmhouse, complete with windmill. You have a creepy hideaway cottage with a well-hidden spooky attic. And finally, you have a San Francisco Victorian house, with a very convenient, space-saving Murphy bed. Let's start off with the cottage and kick things off with some landscaping. Dreamhouse is not only about adding decorations to the space, but also about changing the colors of things to your liking. Let's change this hideous yellow roof into something with better curb appeal, even though this property doesn't really have curbs. One click changes the color, a second click changes it back, which is good because you won't find any undo buttons in this program. Clicking a third time will alter the object's second color if it has one, and the fourth click will change it all back. Coloring is not just limited to objects. If you recolor the sky, you could change the time of day. The program is even kind enough to have stars in the sky if you happen to paint the sky into night. Now that we have the palette all settled, it's time to add some personal touches. Clicking on the moving truck brings up the furniture selection screen. You'll notice that a lot of the stuff that you can add comes in multiple pieces. While this does allow you a higher degree of customization, this was also done to work around the C64's sprite color limitations. Adding a tree, for example, requires me clicking on each piece of it. When you go back to the main screen, everything you clicked will be presented to you, one at a time, in reverse order in which you selected them. As you can see by my very poor attempt at making the most basic of trees, it might take a bit of practice. Let's try something a bit simpler, like this fountain. Once we have everything in place, we can click the animate icon and bring the scene to life. Not everything animates, and certain special objects require you to manually hover over it and press A to bring it to life. The book tells you what these things are, although if you can't find it, you could always just poke around and figure it out through trial and error. If I were especially proud of my creation, this would be a good time to save it to a floppy disk, because otherwise, once we move inside, everything we did is lost forever into the black hole of forgotten bits and bytes. The interior of the home is where you could bounce around rooms, knock on the walls, and really make this house your home. Move between rooms by hovering over a door and hitting the D key. What the cottage lacks in indoor bathrooms, it makes up for in creepy attics. Once you're up there, you'll find an assortment of cartoon creepiness, all of which requires you to press A to bring to life. No house is a home until there's a four-legged friend in there, so let's add one. Both the cat and the dog have different heads and bodies, so you can set them in whatever pose will look the most Rockwellian. And of course, it animates. Since I know it's bugging you, let's color in the sprite so that it blends in better with the background. Dreamhouse's warehouse offers up a lot of furniture options, but if you're trying to create something unique, you could take things over to the workshop. There you can assemble your new creation separate from the distractions of the house. And if you really need more options, some object category pages have a generic square you could use and color as needed. The biggest problem with Dreamhouse is that it is easy to get carried away with adding new items to your house. But the memory limitations of a 1980s 8-bit computer will unfortunately put a strict cap on your imagination. It is a bit disheartening to have your vision for a Dreamhouse squashed for technical reasons, and all too often you may find yourself having to decide between your digital family having a bed or a refrigerator, but not both. Not that it really matters. Once you're done decorating your dream house and play with the animation, there's not much else to do except save it to disk and perhaps revisit it another day. But despite the problems, we still had a lot of fun with this program. It was a simple activity disk for the family computer that kept us entertained for hours on end. If you have the time to spare and a reliable way of playing Commodore 64 software, or you have the patience to try to figure out how to get it to work on archive.org, give it a shot. I don't imagine modern users will want to spend as much time with it as we did back in the mid-80s, but it is still a charming little program. Dreamhouse lets every member of the family use his or her creativity in new exciting ways, and the cat is in the shot.